This morning we are going to be discussing a very controversial, very exciting, very interesting topic. We're going to be discussing about dressing, jewelry, and tattoos. Right? That's what we're going to be talking about or discussing. And we will find our answers, solutions from the Bible, right? So when you think of dressing, people dress for various reasons. People dress culturally, isn't it? According to different cultures, we find that people dress according to their culture. So to a great extent, dressing is pretty much or primarily influenced by the culture that you find people. So if you go to India, in India, they've got their special and specific way of dressing. If you go to Scotland, they've got their own specific way of dressing. If you go to Europe, the Europeans have got their own taste. You go to Asia, they also have their own taste of what? Of dressing. You come to Africa, you find that in Africa we have our own way of what? Of dressing. So to a greater extent, what we are as a result of the cultures that we find ourselves coming from. Very much often you realize that the African culture is very often influenced by the European culture. Does that make sense? So in other words, the Europeans, they sort of set a pace for Africans. Africans, to a greater extent, we have adopted whatever is coming from the other side, and we've absorbed that, and we live with that. And to a greater extent, I've realized that also in the church, it has become an issue where we push so much the European standards. But I understand why, because it is the Europeans who brought the gospel to Africa. So when the Europeans brought the gospel to Africa, when I say the gospel, I mean they brought the word of God. But in that space as well, they mingled that with the word of God. Does it make sense? That's why you find in some circles, it's an issue for you to go probably stand for men. If you're presenting in the church, you need to have a jacket and to have your tie. When you read in the Bible, you never find where it talks about a jacket and a tie. But we are so much influenced by how the pioneers, when they brought the word to Africa, how they presented themselves. So we looked at them, we listened to them, and we embraced everything to a greater extent that some of the issues that we debate and argue, it's more of a culture than it does says the word of God. Does that make sense to you? So culture plays a very important role in the way how we behave, how we interact, how we socialize, how we eat, how we dress. Culture comes. But over and above that, God also has something to say to his children. And that's what we want to discuss. What does God say? Obviously, we're talking of culture. The Indians are doing their own things, the Africans, the Europeans, the Jamaicans, the whosoever. But does God have something that underpins or that governs the principles that we ought to apply? So that's the discussion we're going to have. What I'm going to talk about today, I'm not going to talk about specifics. And when I say specific, I'm not going to tell you dress this way, don't dress this way, do this and don't do that. That's not the discussion. The discussion is primarily centered on principle. It's centered on what? Principle. So a principle is a universally acceptable standard. Or you go to America, they will also apply the same standard, the same measure. You go to Africa. In our different cultures, there's a theme or there's a foundation or a principle that governs the way we do things. Let's first start. I want us to read from Exodus. Let's open our Bibles, please. I would love us to open our Bibles. I would like us to open and read so that we get. Let's understand the principle of dress code according to God. Right? I want us to read from, let's start from Exodus 28. Exodus 28, verse 1 to 4. Exodus 28, verse 1 to 4. Let's find the principles. So when we say principles, we are saying it's universally acceptable. Right? So if you move from any location, any people, any time, any culture, that applies. Does that make sense? We call ourselves the .com generation or whatever we call ourselves. We've got old school, we've got all these things. But in those different generations, there is a universally or a standard that governs everything. Does it make sense to you? So that's what we want to find out. The principles that governs how we dress. What does God say? Let's read from verse 1. So this one, where we are taking the principle, this is when Aaron and his sons were appointed as priests. They were appointed as what? Yes, speak to me. They are appointed as priests. And these priests, they were the highest officers within the Jewish economy or within the Israelites. To be a priest, it was a very high honor. It was God who said, I want Aaron to come and serve before my presence. Does it make sense? I want this family. So God said, I want Aaron and all his descendants. Only Aaron and his descendants. These are the people who will come and minister every day, night and day, before my presence. Let's find out how God then suggested how they should present themselves in as far as dressing is concerned. What does it say? Let's read.
The Lord said to Moses, send for your brother Aaron and his sons Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. They are the ones I have chosen from Israel to serve as my priests.
So I've chosen these ones to serve as my priests. Very well. Continue.
Make Aaron some beautiful clothes that are worthy of a high priest. Aaron is to be dedicated as my high priest, and his clothes must be made only by persons who possess.
All right. So this vision says, I want you to make Aaron and his sons clothes that are worthy of a what? Of a high priest. Oh, you guys, speak to me. Don't complicate this. It's not even complicated, right? I know you guys are doing doctorates and masters somewhere else, so you're very smart and intelligent. I want us to be as open and simple and plain. Just follow through the logic. Don't overthink it. Another vision. What does the vision say? This vision, what does it say? Yeah, please.
And thou shalt make holy garments for Aaron thy brother for glory and honor.
So this version says, I want you to make garments for Aaron your brother. For what reason? What is the motive behind the dressing? For okay, maybe this guy is the didn't respond. Can you read for us from your version?
From verse 1.
From verse 1, yes. Just one verse 1 and 2. Yeah, read for us. Listen very carefully, because if we miss those things, we will live here empty. Yes.
Now take Aaron your brother and his sons with him from among the children of Israel, that he may minister to me as a priest. Aaron and his sons, Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar, and make holy garments for Aaron your brother, for the glory and for the beauty.
Okay, so this version also says for glory and for beauty. So what is the motive? Why did God say, I want you to make garments for these guys? What is the motive? What is the principle that God gave Aaron? I mean Moses, the instruction. There are words that are coming from those passages. For glory and for beauty. Some versions they say for glory and honor. Oh, speak to me. Why did God suggest a specific design? Or why is the priest supposed to dress? What is the motive that inspires his dressing, according to the Bible?
For his glory.
For glory
For his honor.
and for... So the bottom line is, we dress for two reasons. Why do we dress? For glory and for... Oh, speak to me. That's the principle of dressing. If you miss this, guys, you will be lost for the rest of your lives. You will argue about don't dress this way or dress this way. I want to give you the principle. The Bible is saying Aaron was given a command to dress. Garments were designed for him. What would bring the glory and honor to him? What? According to the Bible. The garment, isn't it? His clothing, the way how he presented himself. What inspired that? God said it is inspired by the fact that he must attract or he must obtain glory and honor. Hello, you guys will look too serious. Like I said, don't overthink this. Just apply your minds. Be flexible. When God is looking at us and he's saying when we dress, when you are choosing whatever to put on, the motive behind 2 points. For glory and for? Hello? For glory and for? So when you are selecting, whether you buy from Pep, whether you buy from Jet, whether you go for a designer, the reason why you dress according to God, what should inspire you, it is that this thing, at the end of the day, it must give you glory and honor. Let's define those 2 terms. What does the word glory mean? What does the word honor mean? From your daily general use of the word. Speak to me, guys. Let's talk.
I think with honor, it's got to do with like respect.
Respect, right?
Yeah.
So we are saying when you dress, who is going to give you that respect? Because remember, God is saying, okay, I want you to dress this guy so that the way he presents himself, it's worthy for him to receive glory and honor. Where was this glory and honor coming from? God is saying, dress this guy in such a way that this garment will give him glory and what? And honor. And the question I'm asking is, who was going to give this man the glory and the honor? Who was going to give him the respect?
God, Christ.
God was going to give him respect, number one. Who else was going to give him respect? The people that he's saving. Hello? I get the picture. He's a minister. It's like a pastor who stands in front of us. The way he presents himself, it's either it will offend us or we are going to respect him. Hello, isn't it? The way he would present, whoever is presenting, when I was coming here this morning, I was like, okay, I'm going to be talking about this. How am I going to present myself in such a way that I don't become an offender to you guys as you're listening to me? Does that make sense, picture? Right. So I'm saying, Aaron and his sons, as they were walking the streets of Israel, I get the idea. The people were supposed to look at them and say, these guys, they deserve our respect. That's what the Bible is saying. As they walk in the streets of Jerusalem, as they minister, as they come to the people, first and foremost, what we see is not what's in your mind. Your mind is projected through the way you present yourself. If you want us to respect you, you first have to respect yourself. Hello? That's the reality. If you want us to respect you, you direct us in the direction you want us to go. And how do you do that? Your appearance, it counts. When you go for an interview, when you guys go for an interview, you present yourself in such a way that when you open the door into the interview room, the first impression you make, it lasts long. In English, they say the first cut is the deepest. So you impress first by your appearance. Oh, I've been into interviews. You are sometimes put off by the way somebody is presenting himself or himself. Does it make sense to you? So God is saying, when Aaron and his sons are dressed, the quality of dressing, the appearance, their clothing, they should command the respect and honor from the congregants. Hello? Okay, let's discuss. You guys are too serious, man. I mean, guys, this is simple and plain. Like I told you, I'm not going to go into do this, don't do this. I want you to say, when you go, wherever you buy, whatever you buy, remember these 2 principles. Whether you're dressed like an Indian or you're going to dress like a cowboy, it's all fine and good. But in all those things, remember the principle, glory and honor. Are you happy? Does it make sense? Okay, any comments? Let's flex this. Let's talk.
I like when you started the conversation with addressing the whole cultural thing, because I feel like, how can I say, when it comes to culture, it differs because back home, when I was growing up with my grandparents, I could never not wear a tie like and it can be how hot, I must wear that jacket. You understand? So, and I was like, I am a dark-skinned guy.
Yes.
And I'm African.
Yes.
So why must I wear this blazer and a tie?
Yes.
It's choking here.
Yes.
Can't even make announcements properly.
Yes.
you know, and then I realized it's got to do a lot with the culture. So
Yes.
I think whatever is considered respectful in that culture,
Yes.
that's what you wear. Because even like when we would be at power finance, we take off our hats.
Yes.
And you know, and because we pray most now, so
Exactly.
you take off your hat.
Exactly.
But I'm like, people living in the ice places, they
Yes.
can't take off their hats while they're praying, they'll freeze.
Yes.
So, you know, like that was going on in my
In your
head.
head. Yes. So you are speaking to, like, remember we said earlier on, that to a greater extent, what influences what we do is the people around us. Are you getting the idea? Is those who were before us. Culture plays a very important role. But God cuts across culture. That's why I've said, I'm not going to tell you to dress like a European. Like right now we're dressed like Europeans. It's okay, it's fine. Does it make sense? It's okay. The bottom line is glory and honor. Hello? As you walk the streets of Cape Town, the way you are dressed right now, does it command glory and honor? Hello? Yes. As you, whatever you do, whether you're in school, at work, remember, God is teaching us that our dress code, the way how we present ourselves, either, what is the opposite of honor? You said respect. What is the opposite of respect? Disrespect, isn't it? So in other words, the way you present yourself either can put you on either side, either respect or disrespected. Does it make sense, guys? Are you a watcher? Robert. Okay. Listen, I've got this. Oh yes.
Sorry, I think the circumstances that you find yourself in.
Right.
That's also very, very important.
Yes. Listen, guys. They're always talking. So she's saying the circumstances sometimes you find yourself. It's very important. I come from Zimbabwe originally. In Zimbabwe, I cannot do anything without a tie and a blazer. Hello? I cannot do sabasu. I cannot. That's how the culture is. But there's no biblical text that supports that. But for the sake of the gospel, hello? For the sake of the what? For the sake of the people to accept me, I put a tie and a blazer when I'm preaching, just for 45 minutes. So that I don't become a stumbling block. Does that make sense to you? Sometimes we argue and fight, no, I should dress this way, this is how I feel. It's all good. We're going to talk about it. But what is the main objective? Let me tell you something. When Moses went into the mountain for 40 days, when he came down to meet the people, his face was shining. I get an idea. But he had the commandments that he was supposed to explain to the people. So the people could not look into his face because he was what? He was radiating the glory of God. He was absorbing. For 40 days, he was face to face with God. So he absorbed the glory of God. And when he went down, do you see something? So when you spend time with God, what happens? It's just a footnote. When you spend time with God, what happens? His glory becomes part of you. Okay, it's another story for another day. So he walks down from the mountain, he went to the people. He wanted to read the commandments. But they could not look at his face. Do you know what they did? They took a piece of cloth and they just covered him. And Moses was able to communicate with the people. Does it make sense to you? What I'm saying is, Moses was just an instrument to pass the message. But his appearance had become a stumbling block to others. Does it make sense to you? So for God to be heard, to be known, Moses said to cover himself so that the word can continue. So I'm saying, sometimes we argue and debate, yet in our arguments and debates, we are blocking the success of the gospel and the people can hear us. Hello? The big picture is not how you are presenting. It's not about you. The big picture is the message you are conveying. Sometimes you want to convey Christ, but your appearance is blocking. It's making noise. Hello? And people can hear Christ. Be covered so that people can hear and know Christ. Okay, the principles of dressing: glory and honor. Don't forget that. When you guys are wearing your jeans, whether it's skinny jeans or it's whatever you call them, remember, for glory and for honor. Will God be glorified? Will men give you honor? Hello? That's the question. Will God, show your hand, will God be glorified? Will men give you the respect that's due to you? Let's hear the young man.
Oh yeah, so yeah, I'm hearing your point on the glory and how you dress.
The principle.
The principle. But I'm also thinking now it can be flipped also.
Right.
You can be wearing like a three-piece tuxedo or whatever.
Wonderful.
But you can come into this church and not actually believe. It's more. You want people to see, okay, I'm wearing this fancy suit, but you're not actually your relationship with God is not there.
That's a second. Okay, before you go any further.
Okay.
We don't know each other's minds. We don't know what's in each other's heart. Does it make sense? The way I dress, it's an index to what is my mind. Hello? Does that make sense? So what I'm simply saying is, for now, we are not going to say, okay, he's wearing a decent, but he's doing evil outside. That's not what we're talking about. We are simply sticking to how we present ourselves. Does that make sense? There are so many variations. You can dress nicely, but you're very evil. You can do those things, but it's another subject for another day. But for today, I just want to lay, because we dress every day. Not only when we come to church, when we walk in the streets of Cape Town, when we go to work, we're dressing. And what I'm picking up is that the way we dress, God says, it influences the people around us, the way they will view us. Does it make sense to you? The way we present ourselves, it's going to affect us when we are presenting somebody. Sometimes the message is good, but people are like, but how can you come to church with a Chelsea jersey? Hello? There's nothing wrong with wearing a Chelsea jersey, but it's out of place. Does it make sense? There's nothing wrong. You can preach wearing a gown, a wedding gown. But people are like, what is the... Your message will be lost. Because people are trying to figure out and understand you first. Simplify the gospel. Just dress simple and decent. So that you don't become a stumbling block.
Yeah, that's why I was going to say that as I think we've got it all wrong as Christians nowadays, that we look at the outward appearance of people and forget about the message. What I think that's now become superficial. The most important thing it says in the Bible that people must see the way we act, the way our message. We must reflect Christ in the way we act, not like in the physical, the outward appearance.
Only.
Yeah.
So the message, you cannot separate the message from the messenger. The messenger and the message, they all go in love. Does it make sense? I can't come here dressed shabby and expect you guys to understand what I'm teaching about. If I come here inappropriately dressed, some of you would have walked away by now. The few remaining are just shy to embarrass me. But most of you would have said, what can we hear from this guy? What can he teach us about dressing? Look at the way I was presenting. I gave an idea. Whether I'm a good husband, whether I'm a good brother, but the mere fact that the 5 seconds you saw me, I put you off. It's very true. Okay, I saw some hands. There was a hand here, there was a hand.
I think there should also be a clear distinction between you and someone else. You want people to see you.
Yes.
You should also be an example.
Yes.
As to how you look and
exactly.
how you want your people to look as well.
Exactly.
So your image does.
It does.
Show. Yeah.
Thank you so much for emphasizing that point. Yes.
About like the jewelry side, is it like normal to have piercings as a Christian?
I don't worry. It's another subject. It's part of this discussion. But I want to lay the principles first. Does it make sense? Yeah. Some of the things we can argue and debate, but I want us to first lay and build up. So remember, we're talking about jewelry. We're going to talk about dress. We're going to talk about tattoos. We're going to talk about that. But it's a building block. So we're going to talk about that. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Another hint. Oh yes.
Another thing I've noticed, dressing also has to do with like careers and stuff, so like firefighters, policemen.
Yes.
You will know what they are by the way they dress.
Okay, alright.
You wouldn't know a policeman is a policeman if they were wearing like a hoodie and a cargo.
Yes, like a civilian.
So, and then another thing is honor to, what my mom always tells me is if I were to, I must think of how I'm gonna dress as if I was gonna meet a king or a president. So, remember you come into God's house.
Yes.
You're basically going to Him as a guest.
Yes.
So you can't come dressed with another thing set aside and you don't want to appeal to Him. So try and think of what you want to bring to him and not to others.
Wow, thank you so much. Let me read so that you can be developed. We want to come to some of those questions. Listen, it says here, the word dignity, according to the Webster dictionary, says the state or quality of being worthy of esteem or respect. I want to underline the word worthy. Right? There are people that when you look at them, they are not worthy of your respect because of the way they are presenting themselves. Does it make sense? So in other words, dignity, it has to do with worthiness of respect. Right? How you will be viewed. The other one says self-regard, self-respect, and self-worth. Right? If you're a child of God, Christ has died for us. He has placed so much value upon us. How much are we supposed to present ourselves? That's another point. Then another one says the word honor. It says high respect, great esteem. Right? Great esteem and high respect. So in other words, the way we present ourselves, I'm going to emphasize this, it's going to either do us justice or not. Then it says, what does it mean to honor someone? Listen to this one. It says, is to regard or treat someone with admiration and respect. Admiration and what? Respect. So when Aaron and his sons were walking, the people would admire them and say, wow, I wish I was also a priest. Does it make sense? So in other words, the way we present ourselves, it calls for those two things. Admiration and respect. Do people admire and say, wow, man, I'll be very honest. When I look at these guys, I really admire him and his little brother. Honestly, ever since I came to this church, these guys, they used to sit right in front of us. I admire these guys. They are always presentable for the occasion. May God bless you.
Thank you.
I admire that. And I'm like, I want my sons also to be like these boys. Does it make sense? I admire these guys. And that's what I want my boys also to what? To do. What have I seen in these guys? They're consistent. Every Sabbath, they are dressed for the occasion. So it's admiration. I don't know their life. I don't know much about them. But what I've seen here, the little that I've seen, I'm like, wow, man, this is how I would love to raise my own who? My own kids. To know that we're now going to church. We need to be dressed in this way and that way. Any questions or any comments? Let's continue reading. Genesis chapter 10, verse 21. This is after the fall of man. After the fall of man. Genesis chapter 10, verse 21. Let's see what happened. When Adam and Eve transgressed against God, what happened? The Bible said they realized that they were naked. And what did God do? Genesis 3, verse 21. Somebody to read. Genesis 3, verse 21.
Genesis 3.
Yeah. Anyone can read. Time is wrong.
Unto Adam also and to his wife did the Lord God make coats of skins and clothe them.
So, after the fall of man, what happened to mankind? They realized that they were naked. They no longer have glory and what? Honor. The glory and honor was lost. I've always said to my friends, it is only when we are in sin that we want to expose ourselves. Genesis 3 verse 21, it says that God wants us to be covered. Hello? Only when we enjoy sin, we want to expose ourselves. But God's intention is to make sure we are properly dressed. We are covered. This is in the Garden of Eden, after the fall of man. I get an idea. God made sure that the clothing that his daughter and son would receive would retain the lost glory. And what? And honor. What did Noah do? He drank the what? The wine. And what happens when you drink wine? He became drunk. What happened in his drunkenness? He took off his clothing. One of his sons saw the father's nakedness, and he told his brothers that I saw the nakedness of my father. And then the two brothers, they took a piece of cloth. One was holding the other corner, the other was holding the other corner. And they went into their father's tent backwards because they didn't want to see the nakedness of their father. And what did they do? They wrapped the father around to cover his nakedness. In other words, to retain his glory and honor. So that he can. When Noah, after the following day, he woke up and he realized what had happened. Do you know what he did? He cursed his great son, the one whose father laughed at him the one who didn't cover his nakedness. He kissed that son and said, you will be a servant of servants for the rest of your lives. And that's why some people say that's where the blacks and all these other groups come from, according to the other people. I get the picture, right? But what I want to bring to your attention is that when Noah realized that this is what happened, it was not a light issue, that someone saw his nakedness. Because it is through in clothing that we retain dignity. And what? And honor. Adam and Eve, they lost the dignity and honor, and they were ashamed of themselves. But God made an effort to make sure they are covered, not to expose ourselves. What I'm trying to emphasize is the dressing we make as we read in the Bible. Glory and Noah, he kissed his son. Why? Because they saw his nakedness. In other words, he's like, you have disrespected me. Hello? You've disrespected me. And he honored the other sons. Why? Because he is saying, you have respected me, you have honored me. How did they do that? Because they covered their father's nakedness. Adam and Eve, when they sinned, they were naked. And what happened? They were embarrassed and shy. That's why they were hiding behind. And God knew the problem, that the dignity and honor is what? Is lost. So what did God do? He provided a garment so that they can retain dignity and honor. Does it make sense? All right, let's talk about the last part. I want us to read the last part. We spoke about the priestly garment. Can we read 1 Peter 2 verse 9? Quickly, 1 Peter, I hear the bells are now going out. 1 Peter 2 verse 9. Some might argue and say, hey, Matake, you're telling us of Aaron and his sons. I mean, that's old school. Those were priests. Doesn't apply to us. That's what you're thinking, right? Yeah. But remember, this is the principle of dressing that governs whatever. Let's listen what Peter says. 1 Peter 2 verse 9. What does it say? Is it applicable to us? Yes. Quickly read. Yeah, anybody can read. 1 Peter 2 verse 1? 1 Peter 2 verse 9.
But you are a chosen people.
You are a
chosen people.
Chosen people. Number one.
A royal priesthood.
Listen. The Bible says, when we read from Exodus, isn't it? 28, it says, I have chosen Aaron and his sons and his descendants to save me. Peter is now coming to the New Testament believers, those in Bellville, and he's saying, you guys, you are what? A chosen people. Continue reading.
A holy nation.
You are a holy people.
God's special possession.
A God's special possession.
That you may declare the praises of Him.
That you may declare the praises of Him.
Who called you out of darkness.
He called us out of darkness.
Into the wonderful.
Into the, some version they say, you are a royal priesthood. That's what I was looking for. You are priest. God has chosen you. The way He chose Aaron and his sons is the very same way that God has chosen us in our generation. We are a priest, royal priesthood. Why are we called? So that we can give glory and honor and declare God's presence into the world. And how do we do that first? Before we even open our mouth, the way we appear. How do we appear? The way we dress. Glory and honor. Don't forget that. The last point in our discussion, because I hear the first verse going on, I want you to read for us Exodus chapter 28, verse 42. This was very fascinating to me. Exodus 28, verse 42. Let's listen to so the priests, they would wear garments that would cover them up to their ankles there. That was they called them the tunics. So it was a very huge garment outside that would cover them up here. But there was something fascinating that I picked up. Read for us Exodus chapter 28, verse 42 and 43. Listen what God says when we talk about covering ourselves. Because someone asked me, to what extent do we cover ourselves? To what extent do we cover ourselves? Let's see what the Bible says from that verse.
Make linen shorts for them.
So these are linen what? Shorts. Do you know what the shorts were? Okay, let's read until we might just jump the gun there.
Okay, that reach from the waist down to the thigh, so they won't expose themselves.
So this was the undergarments for the priests. Hello? These were, in other words, let me say, these were their underwears. God is saying their underwears, they were supposed to cover up to their thighs. Over the underwear, they would put a garment that would cover up to this level. I'm not saying go and wear things that like that, but what I'm trying to show you is that how God, there's certain parts that should not be exposed. Does that make sense to you? Do you know if the priest would go into the sanctuary without wearing that short inside, he would die? And people would say, he died because of not wearing an underwear that was covering properly. God was saying you must cover yourselves properly. Does it make sense to you? This is the message that God is giving us. That if the priests were expected to cover themselves up to the thigh, some versions actually they say up to the knee. I think for me, I get a picture of how much should I cover myself. I'm going to read for you something. It says, the priestly undergarments were linen breeches worn by the priest and the high priest in ancient Israel. They reached from the waist to the knees and so were not visible, being entirely hidden by the priestly tunics. God is saying they were supposed to cover their thighs up to the knee as they minister before Him. Remember, they were dressing to go in the presence of God. Does it make sense to us? This is how far-reaching God is. God is saying we should cover our nakedness in such a way that when we walk, it gives us glory and honor. What do you guys take from this point? Like I told you, I'm not here to tell you go and dress this way or don't dress this way. But I want you to make your personal choice and decision in life. Does it make sense? What I'm telling you, young man, is a principle that if you abide by it, even in an interview, in a worldly setup, you'll be respected. Does it make sense? Not only on church level. It's a principle that even at workplace, when they are looking for someone to give space as a manager, the world will say, this guy is worthy of this office. What I'm telling you is, when they are looking for a school president or a university president, SRC, people would say, you know what, this guy, he commands respect. Isn't it? You cannot run away from the way you present yourself. That's what I want you to leave you this morning. As you guys go and buy, whether you go for designer clothes, it's all good. I'm not going to tell you don't buy this, do this, don't do that. No, I'm saying the choice is in your hands. Hello? Whether you buy from Pep, Jet, Edgar's, wherever, it's all good. Go and buy. But when you do that, remember the principle. When you go before your wardrobe and you're selecting something to wear as you go to school, as you go to church, as you go to college, just remember that the way you're going to carry yourself is also going to be affected by the type and the way you grow. Do we still have time? Are they?
No.
Okay, let's go to the other point. So did you get that? The point is that we are royal priesthood. We are projecting a message as we walk. Are you getting the idea? People should see Christ in us. God has chosen us, as He had done to Aaron and his sons. We are also chosen so that we can represent God. So that when we do our things, we give glory and honor to God through covering ourselves. Noah, remember Noah. He cursed his son because he saw his nakedness. But nowadays, there's so much nakedness going around. Hello? If Noah could be embarrassed, only his son seeing his nakedness, how much would we be embarrassed when the whole world is seeing our nakedness? Hello? Noah was embarrassed. He cursed. You know what a curse is? A curse and a blessing. When your father in those days, and even in our days, when your father blesses you, God will honor that blessing. When your father curses you, God will honor that case. If your father says, for the rest of your life, you will be a slave, that case will happen in your life. I'm saying Noah was disgusted because his son saw his nakedness. Hello? Think about it. Let's go to the next point. 1 Peter 3 verse 3. I know some would say, we want the Old Testament. We will dwelling much more. What does the new say? 1 Peter chapter 3. Quickly read, guys. Your time is not on side. And somebody can also open for us 1 Corinthians chapter 6. Right? And then somebody loves Proverbs chapter 7 verse 10. You Proverbs 7 verse 10. Tato here, I want you to go with 1 Peter. Young men, I want you to go with 1 Corinthians. Just hold those. Let's start. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 3 to 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whose adorning, let it not be that outward adorning of play.
Okay, maybe start from verse 2. Let's start from verse 1 so that people can understand. This is Peter writing to the church. What is he saying?
Likewise, ye wives, be in subjection to your husbands.
So he's talking to wives and saying, wives, be in subject to your husbands. And continue reading.
That if any obey not the word, they also may without the word be warned by the conversation of the wives. So
he's saying, if the wife respects the husband and the world is looking, those that are looking may also be attracted to the gospel simply because of the way how the wife respects his who? Husband. Continue reading.
While they behold your chaste conversation coupled with fear.
Continue.
Whose adorning, let it not be that outward adorning of plaiting the hair and of wearing of gold or of putting one on of apparel.
So he was talking now to the wives and to the women and saying, you know what? It's good to adorn yourselves, but don't waste too much time trying to adorn the outward person, right? I need another version. Which version is this one?
King James.
King James. The other versions, they say we must dress modesty. What does the word modesty mean? Modesty. When we dress, let's dress modesty. This one, listen to what it says. This definition says, modesty is an attitude of humility. It's an attitude of what? Speak to me, man. And it descends in dressing. So it's humility and decence. It says again, grooming language and behavior. If you are modesty, you do not draw undue attention to yourselves. Hello? When you are modesty, you must not draw undue attention to yourselves. So in other words, I've seen some young people sometimes they come with maybe painted hair or it's green, it's colorful. And when they walk, everyone is just like, are you getting the idea? Or you see some young people, they wear a short inside, then there's 2, 3, 4 shorts legging behind, and everyone is like, they are just attracting themselves attention. So when you talk of modesty, it's humility. Are you getting the idea? It's humility, it's decence. Don't draw undue what? Attention to you. Where should the attention go? Everything should point everyone to God. So I've heard people, hey, modesty. This is the definition of modesty. Simple, humility, decence. And it should point people to God. So let me say to you young people, you are the leaders, not only of tomorrow, even today. Every week I was saying to my wife, every week you always hear there's a funeral here. And you know why there's a funeral here? Some of the old folks here, they are very old. Alright? You can actually see they are passing away. What they're simply doing, they are handing over the reins to this class. Are you listening to me very good? I'm saying the old folks are passing the reins to us. As they are passing the reins, this church, very soon, you guys, you'll be the leaders 100%. And what I want to say is, we need to set a standard of the church we want also to live in the future. One day we'll move away. We'll pass away. You get the idea? When I come here and speak to these old elders, you know what they tell me? They tell me that things have changed. In their times, every woman, for example, would come with a head. Am I lying? Right? I'm saying during their time, that was the level of decency. They would come and cover themselves. Are you getting the idea? And I'm saying we are the next leaders. We need to set a standard for the next generation. Does it make sense to us? It's very important. Let's not forget that. Can somebody read for us Proverbs quickly? Proverbs chapter 7 verse 10. I want you to listen to what this one says.
And there was a woman met, and they...
It talks about wisdom. So this is Solomon is talking about wisdom, right? And he says what happened. A man who lacks wisdom, that's what he's talking about now, just to give you quick context. But I want you to pick up what he's going to say. Read.
And there a woman met him with the attire of a harlot.
So he said, and there appeared a woman who was dressed like a what? Read it again.
With the attire of a harlot.
She was dressed like a harlot. What is a harlot? What is a harlot? During the times of Solomon, there were people who had a profession of prostitution. Does it make sense to you? He mentioned earlier something that a policeman, how do you know a policeman? How do you know a policeman? How do you know a father or a father? A pope? How do you know them? They wear, the men of the cloth, you see them. How do you know a fire brigade officer? A firefighter, how do you know them? You know them by their uniform. Solomon is saying he was looking through the window and he saw a young man walking. When he saw the young man walking, the young man met a young lady who was dressed like a... Was the young man a harlot? I mean, was the young lady a harlot?
No.
Was he a harlot? Was he a harlot? If I say you are like, am I saying you are?
No.
You guys, amen. So the young lady was dressed like what? But was she a harlot? She wasn't. But she was dressed like a